take this and put it up there. Here, for reference, this is how small the sketchbook is. I decided that for this piece, I'm gonna try not using a projector. The reason I don't want to use a projector is because it always gives me a hard time. I also want to try experimenting with my art more, and I want to see if I can translate something from my small sketchbook onto a bigger surface. Sharp. So for the base sketch, I decided to just use pencil. What I want to do with this piece is experiment with charcoal and oil pastels. I want to use the charcoal to get this nice dark tone for the bowl. I want it to have a lot of contrast with the white clouds behind it. And then I want to use some blue for the sky and a little bit of burnt orange for the ground. I haven't really made a big piece like this with oil pastels, so I'm excited to just dive into it and see what I can make. And with one more tweak to the horns, the first part of the drawing is done. And now that the bowl's done, I think I'm gonna call it a day and come back to this in the morning. Okay, it's the morning now, and we're outside because I'm gonna use some spray fixative. Whenever I do spray fixative, I do try to do it outside because it is fairly toxic. I also try to use a mask. I wanna try to limit as much of this going into my lungs as possible. Now I'm just gonna let that dry for a couple hours. So it's actually been a few days since I've been able to work on this thing. The same day that I spray fixed this, we were having some contractors in to come work on the house. They worked all day that day, and they worked all day today, and I worked today. So there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for me to actually work on this. Before I start going into the colors, I want to see if I can maybe block off some of this area. One sec. I got some painter's tape, and one more sec. And some printer paper. And my plan is to cut out a shape that roughly resembles this area here. I'm hoping if I'm able to cover this area, that a lot of the dust that comes down from me coloring in the sky isn't going to affect the rest of the piece. So first, I'm going to trace this general shape onto the printer paper. I just want to say real quick, I have no idea if this is going to work. A lot of what I'm doing here is pretty experimental for me. I've never used oil pastels before, and I've never covered a piece of artwork like this before. If it works, that'll be pretty cool. It's a technique that I can apply into the future and use in other projects. If it doesn't work, well, then I learn from my mistakes. And now I find out if it worked. Look at that. Worked pretty good. That's just the top one though. I'd say that worked pretty well. Looks like there's a little bit of blue spots on the clouds. Mainly just here and here. I'm gonna see real quick if I can erase that out. Okay, that worked pretty well too. Now that I got the blue in there, I'm gonna start moving on to the ground. Okay, so that blocking off technique actually works pretty well. There were a few spots that actually peeked through on the orange. Not much at all though. So I'm gonna have to go through now and figure out how to add the color into those areas. Okay, this is a lot easier than I thought it would be. Oil pastels are great. Okay, so it took a long time, but I finally have a ground plane that I like. When it was just the orange, it was feeling kind of flat, kind of boring. I wanted a nice gradient, so I wanted to add in some reds. I want to add in a little bit of browns, kind of make it feel a little bit more earthy, a little bit more of like a burnt orange. I also decided to add in a shadow. I wasn't originally going to add a shadow, but the piece was just starting to feel a little bit flat without it. During this process, I made a giant mess, so I'm gonna have to clean up now. My hands are just covered. I'm gonna have to go through and clean all this up right now. It's also pretty late at the moment, so I'm gonna put a pause on this and head to bed. So I've gone through and spray fixed this a second time to make sure all the colors stay in place. Just like before, I'm gonna use this block out method to block out the sky, the bowl, and the ground to make sure that none of the colors I use on the clouds get onto the rest of the piece. So I've got the areas mostly covered where I want them to be covered, but I have a high suspicion that this coverage isn't going to work as well as it did the first time. To counteract that, I'm just going to have to be a lot more delicate and a lot more precise than I was the first time. So I was right, the coverage didn't work very well. It still covered a good decent amount, but if we get closer, you can tell that there's a lot that ended up on the bowl. But I think I can just erase this out. Yeah. And this is why it's important to do spray fixative in between these sessions, so I can go through and erase out any of the new stuff that gets put down. So I made the assumption that I could cover up some of the pencil marks that I had made with the yellow color for the clouds, but you can see that that's not really working. I think what I'm going to do is try to blend out some of this blue to get closer to the clouds to hopefully make some of those pencil marks a little bit less visible. So I can't really fill that area in with blue, it's just not really working. If you see here, I ended up just kind of erasing it out. I think I'm just gonna go back to my original plan and just fill in that entire area with the yellow I'm using for the clouds. And I think I'm just gonna have to be okay with having some pencil marks in the clouds. think I'm finally done. The only thing left to do now is spray fix the piece, take off the tape, and see what the final illustration looks like. Wow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like the video if you like it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.